Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session called Growing the Greenbelt 2021 Regional Resilience. HEN is hosting this on behalf of Ontario Headwaters with funding from the Greenbelt in order for Ontario Headwaters to share information with all of us about how to contribute to the Growing the Greenbelt consultation process. So we welcome Andrew McCammon, Susan Lloyd Swail, and Lexi Whalen to our session this evening. Let me just start by saying that we will be recording this session tonight. So if you have any concerns about being on video in a recorded session, I invite you to turn off your videos. I will also ask you to remain muted throughout the session just to reduce distractions. And lastly, we will use the chat feature this evening for questions. So if as the presentation proceeds, you have any questions, please feel free to put those into the chat. And a Q&A session will be moderated toward the end of the presentations. And I think that probably covers the key housekeeping pieces for this evening. So I'm going to pass it over to Andrew to proceed with the rest of the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, HEN, for being a local community partner, helping us bring our message to a broader audience. It's a pattern we've been adopting for several years. We're not a competitor. We don't sell memberships, but we try to provide intellectual material so that our partners, our sister organizations, can have a turnkey activity from which their members can benefit. So we hope that we really thank you for helping us with this. And you hit it exactly correct. The purpose of our funding from the Greenbelt Foundation is to orient and educate and provide information so that you as individuals can make an informed and hopefully improved presentation or submission to the government. We do have a submission which you can endorse, but that's just because we're dedicated and we wanted to do that. Our purpose is to help you understand this and make a better presentation. Slide, please, Susan. So I have a few housekeeping chores. It'll just take me a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to turn this over to Susan. But wanted to stress for you that we chose the term regional resilience because it is both a definition and really an opportunity, a purpose. Regional resilience is safeguarding long-term ecological integrity, social well-being, and economic prosperity. If you don't have regional resistance, you're in a deficit situation and something's hurting. We believe, in addition, that this, when the government is asking us for our suggestions on how to grow the Greenbelt, that it is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. That hasn't been carried through previously, except for the urban river valleys. And there was a consultation in 2017, which did not get completed because of the election and the change in government. But we really believe this is a generational opportunity to shape the expand the Greenbelt into the greater Golden Horseshoe. I have a couple of other few little things to do. I wanted to explain that in spite of our name, the Ontario Headwaters Institute is actually a full-service environmental organization. We originally started on headwaters, but we have amended letters patent, and we now look after full watersheds, their natural heritage, and the receiving waters. So we get into a lot of things like land use planning and the protection of Lake Ontario. We are supported in this episode, this particular series of webinars, by two marvelous consultants. Lexi Whalen is helping us with our social media, where I get lost, and she's just doing a fabulous job keeping our message consistent, keeping in front of people, and being an excellent document manager as well. So Lexi joins us in that capacity. The presentation tonight is going to be from Susan Lloyd Swail, who's a planning consultant and well known as a Greenbelt expert and educator. She has a master's degree in planning. She's served as a counselor. She's performed executive director role at the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust, and she's worked for the Greenbelt Foundation and Environmental Defense, and just has a wealth of knowledge. Two more quick things from me. First of all, I'm wondering if each of you could put in the chat how much you know about the Greenbelt. Very simple, 1, 2, or 3. 1 would be, you don't know very much, you may be a beginner, this is kind of new to you. Number 2 would be, well, you have some familiarity and feel you can make a few good points. And number 3 would be that you're well versed in the Greenbelt. You've made previous presentations and you consider yourself quite knowledgeable. So if you could put 1, 2, or 3, we'll be able to track that when we look at the chat after the session. Finally, I just have one last chore, and it's actually a pleasure. I said earlier that the regional resilience is both a goal and a definition, but it's actually also more than that, because it's really important for us to acknowledge the history and the cultural inheritance of the Greenbelt and the Greater Golden Horseshoe. The whole of this area is inhabited by what we now call treaty people. We are all treaty people who live in this area. That includes the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee, English and French settlers, and all Canadians today. We are bound together by treaties of friendship, forged in the wealth of our lands and waters. And we hope that our work today in this webinar and in this consultation will help make a more resilient region that embraces the spirits of reconciliation and cooperation. So without further ado, I'm turning this over to Susan. Your mic's not on, Susan. Susan?
We still can't hear you, Susan. You're not muted now, but we are not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Technology, woo!
Press the start button.
Okay, here we are. So the province wants to hear from you about growing the size of the Greenbelt. You can access the online portal through the Environmental Registry. Tonight, I'm going to run through our recommendations to the province on where to grow the Greenbelt. And later on, Andrew is going to offer some easy ways for you to participate. But don't take too long, because the last day for submissions is April the 19th. The consultation document asks 6 questions. 4 questions address where to grow the Greenbelt, questions 1 to 4. And then the last 2 questions, 5 and 6, ask about how growing the Greenbelt fits with the provincial priorities at this time. Before I take you through our key points in our submission, let's look at the current context. Oh my God. Sorry, my screen is frozen now. My screen is now frozen.
Lexi, couldn't you?
There. Got it. Sorry. I'm having internet problems tonight. Can you tell?
Well, just to let everybody know, we have a plan B. If we have to go to it, we will. But hopefully you're over the hump, Susan. Thanks very much.
Hopefully. Well, that's up to Bell Canada, really. Anyway, Ontario's environmental policy framework has been weakened since 2018. Growth and development is prioritized over environmental health. It's important to acknowledge how these policy changes favor private interests over good planning and the public interest. Our policy equilibrium is out of sync. Growing the Greenbelt can help us to rebalance the growth agenda. The previous government consulted on Growing the Greenbelt just after the 2015 Coordinated Plan Review. Subsequent, they held consultations on Growing the Greenbelt, and they mapped the agricultural system and the natural heritage system throughout the Greater Golden Horseshoe. But before this review happened, there was a dialogue on how to proceed with Growing the Greenbelt, and these ground rules were set out by a bunch of environmental and community organizations. Now, we're very hopeful that the government may abide by them, but we're not positive that's going to happen. I think the first is probably the most important: retain all lands currently protected within the Greenbelt. And that's something that's currently being challenged right now in Witchert-Stouffville. And I imagine a number of other municipalities are also dealing with Greenbelt threats as well. So what is the Greenbelt? The dark green areas on the map identify the Greenbelt Plan area, the protected countryside. The Greenbelt Plan is a provincial land use plan that protects some of the best agricultural land in the region. The Greenbelt area encompasses 3 plans, each one unique. Together, they protect over 2 million acres of land in the Greater Toronto Area. The Niagara Escarpment Plan is the backbone of the Greenbelt. Its limestone hills extend from Niagara to Tobermory, the medium green areas on the map. The Oak Ridges Moraine is regulated by the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan. It's a light green area across the top of Toronto, extending into the east just south of Rice Lake and Peterborough. The moraine protects source water. It's what I like to say, the life support system of the Greenbelt. The Greenbelt Plan can be amended by an order in Cabinet. Official plans must be brought into conformity with the Greenbelt plans, but municipalities implement the plan. And all Planning Act decisions within the Greenbelt area are required to conform to the plan. Every 10 years, the Greenbelt Plan is reviewed and changes can be made to the policies. The last review was in 2015. This map illustrates the growth plan. The area in beige and the purple areas. The purple areas are the urban areas. The beige is the growth plan area. And the growth plan is another provincial plan, but it allocates growth throughout the region. The Greenbelt covers only 21% of the lands in the Greater Golden Horseshoe area. So the balance of those lands are all within the Places to Grow growth plan. Of recent changes to the growth plan, lower density targets, they extend growth plan forecasts to 30 years, and they allow settlement boundary expansions, which are contrary to building complete compact communities. We need to limit sprawl and protect clean water sources, nature, and farmland. And we would like to contend that growing the Greenbelt throughout the Greater Golden Horseshoe area is the best way to do that. Let's turn all that beige green. So why grow the Greenbelt? Not only is the Greenbelt effective, but people love it. Over 90% of people in the Greater Toronto Area support the Greenbelt, and I think it's 85% want it to grow. In fact, people feel so strongly about the Greenbelt that when the government introduced legislation in 2018 to allow development in the Greenbelt, the outpouring of support was so strong that they had to backtrack. The Greenbelt is effective at stopping sprawl, and growing the Greenbelt will help reduce leapfrog development, protect farmland, and support a consistent, connected natural heritage area. So some of the benefits to growing the Greenbelt? Well, one of the most important is the connectivity between natural heritage system features. Right now, you've got 2 provincial plans looking at natural heritage system features, And there really should be a consistent policy framework between the two. The Greenbelt helps to retain agricultural lands that are under development pressure. And we know that there's consistent development pressure throughout the greater Golden Horseshoe area, and it's getting stronger. Settlement areas and their lake-based sewer pipes outside the Greenbelt are not permitted to expand into the Greenbelt. So the cities on the outside that are trying to expand into the Greenbelt, they are prohibited from doing so. So the Greenbelt stops sprawl on the edge of the plant area. So threats to the Greenbelt today, well, there's a number and they seem to be growing. There are many threats. I think perhaps the one that most people don't know about is the Upper York sewage solution, which is a very large sewer pipe that may occur in the York Region area. It was going to go into Lake Simcoe, but I think now they're looking at extending it down to Lake Ontario. The GTA West Highway, you may have heard of, also called the 413, is another piece of infrastructure, highway infrastructure. The Niagara GTA is a highway that was purported to go across the Greenbelt in the Niagara area. And the Bradford Bypass is proposed within a provincially significant wetland. There's also some major transit stations that are being considered within the Greenbelt area. And while infrastructure can pass through the Greenbelt if it's serving urban areas or if it's serving existing urban rural communities within the Greenbelt, it really is, cumulatively, it really affects the integrity of the Greenbelt. Now, aggregate extraction is prioritized in Ontario, and it trumps natural heritage systems and agriculture. So that's very problematic going forward. And the current municipal comprehensive review process that is going on right now across the Greater Golden Horseshoe area to bring plans into conformity with the new growth plan. Now that's going to be problematic too, because it's allowing the expansion of urban boundaries for towns and villages within the Greenbelt. So these small towns and villages that are in the Greenbelt, they can expand out. While urban areas outside can't expand in, those little towns and villages can't expand out. So you're kind of eating the Greenbelt away from within. There are also compliance issues with some municipalities and concerns that the current government may not uphold the plan. So where to grow the Greenbelt? As I mentioned, our approach to growing the Greenbelt is to paint the Greater Golden Horseshoe area green. Just as the growth plan manages growth across the region, the province should protect the land that feeds us and the water systems that sustain us, and the natural systems that protect biodiversity throughout the region to support resiliency. Now we're going to turn our attention to the many areas where the Greenbelt can grow, or we think it should grow. We address all of these recommendations in detail and provide maps within our submission. So let's look at the first question. The first question asks whether or not we want to grow the Greenbelt within the Periscope Moraine. So this map identifies the Periscope Moraine area. It's right along the border there with Milton and Hamilton, extends right down into the Bradford area. The Periscope Moraine provides drinking water to over 800,000 people in the Grand River watershed. By 2041, the population of the area is expected to grow to 1.3 million people, all reliant on groundwater. It was essential that the groundwater system is protected from the cumulative impacts of development in the watershed. This map of the Blue Belt within the Periscope Moraine area identifies the water systems that feed the Moraine area. Natural heritage system throughout the area, including river valleys, headwaters, wetlands, intermittent streams, discharge and recharge areas must be protected for watershed resilience. As the Periscope Moraine is an area with high value aggregates, provisions needs to be made within the plan to restrict aggregate taking below the water table. We recommend the province grows the Greenbelt in the Periscope Moraine and the Grand River watershed. Now, question 2 also deals with the Periscope Moraine, and that's asking, how should the province then move from a large study area into the area that should be protected? And in our submission, we suggest that there needs to be extensive in-person consultation and meaningful consultation with First Nations, among other recommendations. So question 3 within the provincial submission asks about urban river valleys. And you see here a number of the urban river valleys extending from the Oak Ridges Moraine. And we believe that all these urban river valleys and headwaters should be added to the Greenbelt. Urban river valleys provide many benefits, including maintaining green infrastructure such as wetlands, floodplain areas, and riparian edge, important for healthy waters, enhancing habitat and biodiversity, supporting a regional trail system, protecting downstream areas from flooding, erosion, and excessive sedimentation, providing healthy outdoor recreation opportunities, and protecting cultural heritage sites. We recommend the expansion of urban river valleys to incorporate connections to the Periscope Moraine through the Speed and Eramosa rivers in urban areas as indicated on the maps. And we further recommend adding the following as urban river valleys that are not on this map: the Nottawasaga River and the Lake Simcoe watershed, as well as the Crothers Headwaters, the Rouge and Humber urban river valleys, and the Grand River watershed. So question 4 asks, what other areas should be added to the Greenbelt? Now, this is an area of the natural heritage system in the Greater Golden Horseshoe. The dark green is a natural heritage system outside of the Greenbelt. The light green is the current Greenbelt area. So the natural heritage system should be contiguous. Let's meld the greens together. Whether features are inside or outside the Greenbelt, they should be afforded the same protection for consistency and long-term planning. Natural heritage system features throughout the Greater Golden Horseshoe perform essential services as they provide clean air, water storage and filtration, maintain resilience to climate change, invasive species, flooding, and erosion control. They contribute to biodiversity conservation and recovery. They sustain the water resource system, including groundwater quality and quantity, critical for downstream cities and economic activities. And they support agriculture, recreation, tourism, and rural communities. We all need the natural heritage systems and the water that sustains us. Our submission recommends growing the Greenbelt throughout the Greater Golden Horseshoe Natural Heritage System. Our specific recommendation is we urge the province to undertake studies and consultation to add the Greater Golden Horseshoe Natural Heritage System, including headwater areas, to the Greenbelt, including areas captured within the Blue Belt map, which we'll look at in a minute. So the Blue Belt. This is a map of the Blue Belt. You can see the Lake Iroquois shoreline over there around Northumberland. That is the former shore of Lake Ontario. We also see up above, you see Lake Simcoe watershed area. And then, as we've already spoken about, the Periscope Moraine and Waterloo Orangeville Moraines down there, just north of Halton in Hamilton. So the Blue Belt contains a number of sensitive water features. And in the Ontario Headwaters Institute submission, we recommend these areas as candidates for Greenbelt protection. In the 2015 review, the Blue Belt was endorsed by many groups across the Greater Golden Horseshoe area. And there is still a website active today called protectourwaters.ca. If you want to find these maps, it's quite good reading. So we support the proposal from the Oak Ridges Moraine Coalition put forward back when the Blue Belt was created. And the key additions include, but are not limited to, the headwaters of the Humber, Don, and Rouge Rivers, the Duffin and Crothers Creeks, the south slope of the Oak Ridges Moraine and Iroquois shoreline along Lake Ontario in Northumberland County, the Luther Marsh, the entirety of the Waterloo and Orangeville Moraines in Wellington County, the Grand River watershed, and the Lake Simcoe Basin. We need to protect all of these vulnerable areas. Adding them to the Greenbelt would permanently safeguard critical water supplies, natural areas, and prime farmland from urban sprawl in the face of increasing population development and impacts from climate change. Now, this beautiful, colorful map is of moraines in the Greater Golden Horseshoe area. This was created by Deb Crandall, who is founder of Save the Oak Ridges Moraine Coalition. Now, Storm had recently completed this report on the moraines within the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and we wanted to include it here. It identifies some of the moraines that have not been protected by provincial regulation. And these moraines all store significant groundwater. They are important for the cities in the area and for agricultural uses. Moraine landforms and the recharge areas should be protected. Millions of people, rural industries, and agricultural operations rely on clean water from these important groundwater sources. So to recap, we have answered question 1, 2, 3, and 4. And those are all within our submission document. So the submission looks at 6 questions. And we're going to look at the next 2 now. They ask, how are we going to reconcile the current government priorities with growing the Greenbelt? So, and our extensive answers to these questions you can find in our submission, but I'm going to give you a brief overview of those next. And I'm sorry, there's a lot of talking and not a lot of pretty pictures in this section. So when answering question 5, we chose to illustrate how provincial priorities are intertwined with the importance of growing the Greenbelt. Provincial policies require municipalities to allocate more land than needed due to changes in the growth plan. These policy changes encourage land speculation and support sprawl, which may lead to higher debt and higher taxes. Growing the Greenbelt supports a balanced, affordable approach to growth and requires municipalities to work towards complete sustainable communities. Our recommendation under growth management is the province needs to fix the growth plan and prioritize growing the Greenbelt to reduce land speculation and limit extending expensive urban services into the countryside, which contributes to housing affordability challenges and increases municipal debt. Similarly, with transportation and infrastructure, in our submission, we highlight the problems with several transportation and infrastructure projects as they are undermining the Greenbelt's protected countryside by fragmenting agricultural systems and impacting natural heritage, including the GTA West Highway, Bradford Bypass, Niagara GTA highways. If built, these highways will affect environmental health, increase climate change emissions, negatively impact the natural heritage system and agricultural system in the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and do very little to reduce congestion. Policies in the Greenbelt Plan allow infrastructure, but fail to consider cumulative impacts of infrastructure and neglect to capture land value, as suburban, industrial, and commercial development is not permitted in the protection countryside. It is inefficient and fiscally imprudent to locate major transit stations in the protected countryside, like Gormley, like the Gormley station, because a density of 150 people per hectare is required around these GO stations. Transit stations should be directed to existing built-up settlement areas where intensification may occur. In addition, COVID has shifted employment models with more people working from home, reducing highway congestion. These changing patterns need to be incorporated into a revised Greater Golden Horseshoe transportation model. A new Greater Golden Horseshoe transportation plan is expected out from the province this spring, and it's going to be extended to 2051, just like the growth plan. As the province considers growing the Greenbelt, we recommend the province prioritize the alignment of mobility infrastructure with existing built-up urban areas and rescind projects that encourage urban growth in the protected countryside and prime agricultural areas, including canceling the GTA West Highway, Niagara GTA, and Bradford Bypass, rescinding plans to build transit stations in the Greenbelt, and updating transportation models with post-COVID commuting data. I've already noted our response to natural heritage systems, and within the submission, I once again review why it's so important to prioritize natural heritage within the Greenbelt. And then the last one is agriculture. So let's look at this. This is a map of the agricultural system in the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And our submission answers question 5 by adding the agricultural system, what we are calling now the Brown Belt, to the Green Belt. It's very important to protect farmland, as only 5% of land in Canada is fertile enough to grow crops. Prime agricultural land is a finite resource that needs protection. The Greater Golden Horseshoe agricultural system you see here was mapped by the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs after the 2015 review. As part of the municipal comprehensive review process, municipalities are incorporating agricultural system mapping. But urban development still trumps agriculture, and some of the best soils are located near the urban areas. So balancing provincial priorities to support a robust agricultural sector is consistent with growing the Greenbelt across the Greater Golden Horseshoe Greenbelt. The agri-food sector in Ontario is very important to the economy. It contributes $47 billion to GDP and employs over 800,000 people. Growing the Greenbelt through the agricultural system will help to address farmland loss, fragmentation of agricultural lands, food security, long-term viability of farming and the agri-food sector, support rural economic development, sustainable agriculture, and soil health. So our submission supports the submission made by the Ontario Farmland Trust to grow the Greenbelt across the Greater Golden Horseshoe agricultural system. So question 6 asks us, are there other priorities that should be considered? So we have named a few other priorities: health and well-being, climate change and biodiversity, regional resilience, and aggregates. So research indicates that 20 to 30 minutes of nature leads to better health, including better management of blood pressure, diabetes, mental health, less stress, and improved immune response. COVID has underlined how vital the natural environment is for public health, wellness, and recreational purposes. These findings are a wake-up call for planning and government to prioritize access to nature. Growing the Greenbelt along natural heritage systems is a cost-effective way to address mental and physical health. And climate change and biodiversity. Expanding Ontario's Greenbelt into the Greater Golden Horseshoe is key to a larger and more resilient region. The Greenbelt's natural heritage system provides an extensive reservoir of free natural infrastructure. Forests, rivers, and wetlands filter the air and water, decrease temperatures, prevent floods, reduce soil erosion, and support biodiversity. Urban river valleys provide an important area where city dwellers can beat the heat free of charge. Growing the Greenbelt via the Periscope Moraine, urban river valleys, the Blue Belt, throughout the Greater Golden Horseshoe heritage and agricultural systems will build a regional resilience model needed to mitigate the changing climate. Regional resilience. Since 2018, an enormous number of policy changes have been made that benefit private interests. As a result of these policy changes, we expect our long-term regional resilience, including the viability of farming, water quality, environmental health, and rural economy, to severely decline. In order to restore balance in the region and support well-being and prosperity, we encourage the province to grow the Greenbelt. We recommend that the province consider the health and sustainable prosperity of the broader Greater Golden Horseshoe as it consults on growing the Greenbelt, thereby extending resilience and policy consistency to the entire region. In addition, we encourage the government to pursue a wide-ranging set of new policies which embrace a fair and green recovery that ensures regional resilience is in turn providing ecological integrity, social vitality, and economic prosperity. Last one is aggregates. So we kind of turned this one on its head. And if you read in our submission, I explain the provincial prioritization of aggregates and how it is problematic because it is prioritized over natural heritage. And in 2017, the Environmental Commissioner of Ontario called on the province to decrease aggregate demand, strengthen the province's powers to protect the environment, and improve rehabilitation rates through better enforcement. Instead, the province has continued to prioritize aggregate production over natural heritage protection. Section 5.3 within the Greenbelt Plan, that speaks to municipal implementation, is problematic for municipalities with stronger policies than the Greenbelt Plan. And there's a few municipalities that fall into this that I'm aware of. There may be others. Waterloo Region in particular has stronger policies to protect woodlot and agricultural lands aggregate operations, which means growing the Greenbelt in the region of Waterloo may jeopardize local protections. Caledon also has a grandfathered aggregate policy implemented within the Greenbelt Plan. In our submission, we are encouraging the province to prioritize local policies over the Greenbelt if they are more restrictive or protective. So the more protective policy should prevail. Before endorsing growing the Greenbelt in your area, you should check with the municipal planner whether your local policies are stronger than the Greenbelt. In addition to asking the province to strengthen Section 5.3 to support stronger municipal policies, the recommendation in our submission states, we support the comments by Greenbelt stakeholders to prohibit new aggregate extraction throughout the natural heritage system inside and outside the Greenbelt. So that's it for policy stuff. I'm now going to turn it over to Andrew, and he's going to follow up with review the recommendations and talk about next steps.
Thank you so much, Susan, and everybody's being very patient. We've been tracking the questions. I just want to do a quick refresh and open us up to questions. For some reason, my video camera has gone on strike. The co-host has what? What is going on here? Has asked you to start video. Yeah. Sorry, folks. I'm just going to press on because you don't need to see my face, and I don't want to keep everybody any later tonight than we're going to be. So re-summarizing Susan's excellent 27 minutes, right on the button as usual. Question one is both that we agree that the Periscope Moraine should be added, and we suggest that there should be significant consultation once there's a boundary proposed. Right now, it's just a concept. Question two was, are you in favor of adding urban river valleys? Yes, we are. Number three, sorry, that was number three. And question four was, what other areas should be considered added to the Greenbelt? Again, this is about growing the Greenbelt. This isn't about its efficacy, that monitoring the roles of the Niagara Escarpment Commission and the Greenbelt Council. This is just about growing it. And we've identified 4 particular areas where the Greenbelt could be grown substantially with very little burden on existing planning considerations. So that's the natural heritage system, in the agricultural system to protect it from ongoing speculation and disappearance, the lands in the Bluebelt proposal, as well as the moraines in the Crandall study, and other key headwaters. There are actually other headwaters that are not included in the natural heritage system and in the Bluebelt map. So, and then what we did is we snuck in a number of policy links to questions 5 and 6 that you can look at. natural heritage, growth management, agricultural, transportation and infrastructure, and then health and well-being, climate change and biodiversity, regional resilience, and aggregates. All of that information is there to help you consider our thoughts and borrow them for any submission that you might wish to author. Next slide, please, Susan. This is a technological. So, just before I turn it over to you, we have an extensive amount of information in a number of different formats for you to see at our Regional Resilience webpage. Remind you that your participation deadline is April the 19th, so you still have a couple of weeks to think about it. If you go to our website, you will see below the list of the webinars a number of options. We provide a PDF of the whole sub. That's generally easier to download. It's less bulky than a Word version. It's compressed. So it's easy to download that and read it at your convenience. Or you can open the Word version if you want to borrow text. There's no proprietorship on this. You're free to cut and paste. You're free to cut, paste, and change if you want to make it better. And so you can use our documents as freeware to make your own submission. And then finally, we have just our recommendations in a auto text email software format. And if you click on that, you would end up supporting and endorsing just the recommendations. 700 words would be sent to the ministry championing this initiative, and a copy would go to your local MPP when you fill in the box for your postal code. So without any further ado, thank you so much. We hope that you can find these resources helpful. The whole purpose of this grant is to provide this sort of orientation and help people navigate through this complexity and give you some wording that you can support, reflect, or amend. Now, there's numerous questions that have already been proposed, and I see there's lots more coming in. So I'm going to, Stephanie, I take it everybody's microphones is muted and they have to do it through the chat. Is that correct?
That is how it's set up at the moment, yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So the first, I'm just going to take these in order. Aki, if I pronounce that properly, he was not sure if what the beige area is. What is the Greater Golden Horseshoe? So I am going to share my screen. Hang on, folks. What's going on here? Oh, man. Please be patient.
Susan may need to stop sharing before you're allowed to share, Andrew.
Huh. Thank you. We need a referee.
Okay, now do you have access to share?
Share.
Here it's coming. We can see it.
So this was the map that we talked about. What is the Greenbelt?
Sorry, Andrew. Sorry to interrupt. Can you put it in the slideshow version so that it makes the map bigger for people to see, please?
Yes, of course. Would also help if I had the right one. So this has the whole of the Greenbelt all in the green. So that includes way up here the Niagara Escarpment. The bulk of this, the Niagara Escarpment comes down through here, obviously, and the bulk of this is the Oak Ridges Moraine in the center, and then the new Greenbelt areas, which are protected countryside, core and corridor areas. But all of that's in the greater Golden Horseshoe. So this beige area all around here is what is the greater Golden Horseshoe. And that's where we're suggesting that all of the areas that we've identified can be grown into, the Greenbelt can be grown naturally into the greater Golden Horseshoe. So that hopefully should answer the question about answer the question about what is the gray area. Okay, so I'm getting a very weird series of screens, so I'm just going to stop doing that. And it's hiding the, I'm sorry, folks, a few little technical hiccups here. It's hiding the my screen from me and the chat. So the second question was Lawson Hunter. I think Lawson wants a better understanding. What's the natural heritage system? And the natural heritage system is a sort of I'll call it a recent innovation in municipal planning, where more important areas that provide key hydrological and terrestrial ecological function are included in a natural heritage system. So not every woodlot is going to be saved from a proposed development, but those areas with added value that are particularly important for terrestrial or hydrologic reasons are now itemized and described in municipal plans as the natural heritage system. And those areas really deserve better protection normally than, just putting development and housing and strip malls in it. And it's the natural heritage system that is a natural way to grow the Greenbelt. The natural system is interconnected, whether it's in the Greenbelt or outside of the Greenbelt in the greater Golden Horseshoe. It's interconnected. So it makes a lot of sense to expand the Greenbelt by growing it into the natural heritage system in the greater Golden Horseshoe. I like being interrupted. I'm very, this microphone's being off, there's nothing I can do about it, but I think it kind of detracts from the question and answer and rebuttal. Susan, you want to jump in at any time? That would prevent me from thinking I'm delivering a monologue here and getting a bit more colorful commentary that balances more than one perspective. Do you have anything to add so far?
Sure, Andrew, just the natural heritage system, when it was created through the last consultation with the coordinated plan review, I'm sure you were at some of those meetings. The important part of identifying the features and functions was the connectivity between them. So there had to be flow or some kind of a forest connected to a large linkage area. Very much like they identified the natural heritage system when they're identifying the Greenbelt and the Oak Ridges Moraine. You need that connectivity so animals can move freely from one place to another, so they can get water and they can have meadows, and that supports biodiversity. So it's the interconnection of the system, like you said, that was really important.
Yeah, well, you expect it so much better, and also it kind of connotes the other side of the coin, which is fragmentation.
Yes.
When the natural heritage system gets fragmented, it stops pollination, species migration. Yep. Some species only breed if they're in a mile interior of a forest area kind of thing. They're not going to breed beside the Forest 7. They need a buffer of corridor. So the natural heritage system is a way to prevent fragmentation. Yeah. The next question, also from Aki, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Are the urban river valleys part of the natural heritage system? That's a yes and no. The origin of the urban river valleys was that the Oak Ridges Moraine and then the Greenbelt were kind of far away from Bay Street or downtown Mississauga or other major urban centers. And so the urban river valleys are, again, another one of those connectivity issues. It does connect some of the uplands through the valley corridors to the receiving waters in Lake Ontario. And that's a hydrological connection. But there's also a social connection. If people in Toronto, and we get accused of being somewhat narcissistic and self-centered, but if we can take a subway up to the Ontario Science Centre, and the Don River is part of the Oak Ridges Moraine, the Greenbelt, then we feel less isolated. It's not something way out there we don't have to take care of. So urban river valleys, now some of them happen to be in municipal natural heritage systems and some aren't. So it's really a question of where it is in the scheme of things. They can overlap, but they don't by definition. David Mayhew has written, what influence does the federal government have over the current provincial actions? That's a real mouthful. I mean, generally, as you may know, the province has responsibility for natural resources. And so there aren't really many influences in a direct sense. The feds have created 2 urban national parks in the last 20 years, in the Rouge and now in Downsview. And there are issues such as, for example, when the provincial government wishes to put a highway through the Greenbelt, and in this case, they're trying to put 3, there is an appeal process to the Federal Impact Assessment Agency to say, wait a minute, we don't think the provincial environmental assessment was good enough. But those areas are few, they're closely defined, they take a lot of effort. The feds can't walk in and tell the Minister of Environment that they don't like how Ontario is treating parks. So it's kind of a really big question. If you're looking for Mr. Trudeau to solve the Greenbelt, don't hold your breath. Susan?
Yeah, I think you've got it there, Andrew. The provincial policy can't conflict with federal policy. So, they all have their jurisdictions and that's pretty much how I'd answer that. But I also want to acknowledge that Councillor Alan Elgar is on this Zoom call. And you know that he was one of the original councillors on the Greenbelt Council and a big champion of the Greenbelt happening in the first place. So, hey, Alan Elgar, thank you. Yay.
Nice to see you, Alan. Anne Seymour has written a novel of a question here. The town of Erin is proposing a wastewater treatment plant for a new development with excessive sewage effluent release into the West Credit River. The West Credit River is in the Greenbelt, so is the town of Erin in Wellington County. Over 7 million liters of sewage effluent per day will flow into Halton's Credit River, along with the urban drainage from growth upstream. I'm not sure there's a question there, but I'm going to interpret the question. Susan referred earlier to the fact that the Greenbelt plan allows for infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So the pipes at small urban settlements are allowed to grow. They're allowed to have sewage treatment plants. They're allowed to put their pipes under the ground through various properties to a water course. All of that is allowed for. The challenge in Erin is that effluent is hitting a waterway, and the quantification and the protection of the hydrologic features is open for debate. You can't oppose the pipe. If somebody was putting, 100,000 gallons of effluent into the West Credit every week, I don't think anybody would be upset. but they're going to put 7.2 million liters of effluent into the creek every day. And so it is felt by many people that the infrastructure is allowed, but nobody's paying attention to the receiving water, and additional steps need to be taken to protect that water. It's a very analogous situation to another infrastructure item called those 3 highways. Yeah. The 413, the Bradford, I see it, Susan, the Bradford bypass and the Niagara Mid-Peninsula corridor. The infrastructure is allowed, but there's salt impact, there's emission impact, there's tire wear, and then there's the threat of increased development. Susan, this is a logical place for you to step in.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Yeah, and it's the cumulative impact of infrastructure that we really are not taking account of. I don't think any level of government is looking at cumulative impacts. And infrastructure, we keep growing, we keep putting effluent into rivers, we keep building new highways, and we're supposed to be protecting the environment for future generations. So there is definitely a conflict between how we're growing and where we're growing, and we need to do a better job of managing growth and building in a more sustainable way going forward. There are some technical ways of dealing with the sewage effluent. There are very expensive treatment plants that can, like a reverse osmosis type system that can clean the water. Are we willing to pay for that kind of infrastructure is a question. And those are the kind of things that we're going to have to deal with in our society going forward.
So I hope that's a good answer to Anne's point, and it ties everybody to the cumulative impacts that apply to both. So there's a lot of proposed developments, and currently the fights are over the permitting. Do we want our town to grow this much? Is this going to help increase road traffic, or is this going to increase the local tax rate? Is this going to increase the opportunities for high school and local employment? Nobody's talking about the sewage. And so from the 413 to the sewage, we're not looking at our cumulative impact upon the Greenbelt. Alan, and see, you welcomed Alan, and now he's set a bear trap for us. Why wouldn't we add cultural heritage landscapes to the Greenbelt? Oh, it looks like he can speak. Alan, is your mic off?
Yeah, my mic is off, and I think we've got a real opportunity to do just that, is to push to get the cultural heritage landscapes, especially if it's a big area, as part of the Greenbelt.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and we have a big one in Oakville. It happens to be called the Glen Abbey Golf Course, which we have also got as a cultural heritage landscape, which also has a 16-mile creek flowing through it.
There you
so
go.
What a perfect opportunity to tie everything in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, who has mapped cultural heritage landscapes across the Greater Golden Horseshoe? I don't think it's been done.
You're probably right, but we have done it in Oakville.
Have you?
And we also have brought in a lot of the 16-mile creek already into the urban river valley. We were the first ones to do that, I believe, to expanding the Greenbelt back how many years ago? Maybe 5 years ago. So, and this is a perfect signal to do that also. So I think it's time to do something like that, to wake everybody up.
I think it's a great idea. I would have a few questions about that because one of the ways of defining cultural heritage landscapes is would be treaty lands, indigenous lands that have historically been used. And I'm not sure if they want to deal with the provincial level of government. That would be a federal level of government that indigenous peoples would be dealing with generally. So I think it's a fascinating idea, and we have put cultural heritage in our submission as one of the areas to grow the Greenbelt. We didn't say landscapes, but Andrew, could we add that in Appendix B?
That's a great introduction, and thank you. So yes, the answer is yes. Let me provide the context. Our submission that you can see has text and recommendations supported by number of maps in Appendix A. Those were provided as common ground before we had our first webinar, which was last week. And we're doing webinars for 3 weeks, and we didn't want to change the submission and have different people seeing and endorsing different versions. It just creates an awful lot of disrespect from the reader. It's just too confusing. So what we have stated in the submission is that Appendix B will be filled in as a result of suggestions heard during the webinars. We have 3 maps coming from partner organizations that want additional, very specific areas added to the Greenbelt, not just the Blue Belt, but parts of the agricultural parts of Brant County, not just other areas, but very specific suggestions. Susan, you're absolutely right. If somebody has the inclination, Mr. Elgar, if you would like to write a short, we can talk with you offline afterwards, but we'd be more than thrilled to think about having in Appendix B a description of the need to include cultural heritage.
You can be sure I'll be contacting you tomorrow for sure. I appreciate that. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Now, Ann Seymour was waving a hand. Ann, is this something you wanted to get in on?
Hello. Yes, my name's Ann Seymour and I live in Caledon on the West Credit River. So you've already heard a little bit of discussion about what's going on here. And I wanted to participate in this meeting because the Credit River runs through Halton, and you will also hear of all of this effluent as well as urban drainage. So that's, yes, as Andrew said earlier, 7.2 million liters of effluent per day in perpetuity that will be flowing through Halton. I don't know if anybody could talk a little bit more to First Nations involvement and at all, but if anybody can, please do. And being, how could the potential of First Nations be included in either the cultural aspect or, we've got the credit of the Mississaugas who may be showing a bit more interest in what's going on and wanting to know more about their river, the Credit River. So.
It's often said at this point in numerous efforts from the traditional settler environmental community that we have made efforts to engage some Indigenous partners. And unfortunately, there has not been a response. And part of that has to do with a requirement for appropriate diplomacy. Sending an email invitation to a First Nation is just asking to be ignored. It's on relationships, it's getting to meet and show respect to the elders. And we fail at this over and over and over again because we're always in such a hurry. So we made the same mistakes and we have not had any different response. And unfortunately, that was just the time frame we had to deal with. I'd love to fix it, but mea culpa, we're guilty too. Alan, I want to go back to this. There's a question in between. Juliana, I'll get back to you in a second, but someone has asked that perhaps can we elaborate on what we mean by a cultural heritage landscape?
Oh, the Glen Abbey lands is we have put through that it is cultural heritage. I could send all the documentation on it because of all the culture that was there, and actually some of the buildings that have been there from years and years and years ago. And that would be part of it. But it ties in so perfectly with the 16 Mile Creek River Valley, where the whole thing, the tableland and the river valley, would all tie together with the Greenbelt going to the north, which gives you your linkages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Susan, it's not just the some of the original. I understand some of the very oldest buildings in the Halton region are associated with Bronte Provincial Park. There's a significant amount of cultural heritage there, but we're still talking early settler, as opposed to indigenous lands used for a variety of purposes that need to be acknowledged. And just so that we pay some tribute here, Credit Valley Conservation really did a bang up job with the proposed Credit Valley Trail. And they had the time and they had the staff, dedicated staff, to make those entreaties and engage local First Nations. And so there's going to be significant signage denoting First Nations cultural contributions or practices with respect to the Credit Trail. But so it's both our own original settler origins and a longer history of Indigenous practices here in the Greenbelt. Oh my goodness, we're caught up. I'll take this point just to share the results of the poll, the informal results of our poll. This has been a fun evening, folks. Technical glitch after technical glitch. We only had, I wrote it down on the back of the page, and now it's not. There we go. 5, 10, 19. We had 19 of 32 people respond. So, you know, some people were either didn't see it or were popping up their coffee or preferred not to answer. But of the 19 who answered, 5 described themselves as level 1 beginners, don't know very much. And 3 described themselves as highly knowledgeable and able to participate in a submission tomorrow. So the 11 of the 19 have some knowledge, have some confidence, looking for a little help. So we've had a very high turnout of knowledge and interest tonight. And I find that very, very fulfilling and hopeful. Beautiful note on the Moccasin Trail. If that's something you're not familiar with, I urge you to make a copy of the URL. The Moccasin Trail is a recent innovation, and it's just gathering a lot of steam and connecting us to a deeper sense of history in our region. Moccasin Trail, excellent. Thank you. That was from Stephanie, I guess. Thank you, Stephanie. Oh, and then there's a note from Ann Seymour, again on Indigenous. I will look forward to reading that as well, and I urge everybody to copy. If you don't know how to copy the chat, you look in the bottom right-hand side of the chat box, and you'll see a little square and the word file, and to the right of that, there's 3 dots in a box, and it's the top. If you click on that, the top item that emerges is called Save Chat, so you can save the chat. You don't have to try to write down a 77-word long URL when it's going to disappear from the screen in a minute. You can save the chat and look at it at your convenience. I think we're coming to a logical end. We had targeted this for 75 minutes. Are there any, if anybody has an urgent issue, if you go to the bottom the bottom of the screen, there's one called Reactions, and you can use a heart, say I love Andrew, or you can say hey, Andrew, go hitchhiking. If you have an urgent issue, please just put your hand up, and we'll entertain another minute or two. But I think we probably did very well tonight. Oh, Anne loves me. Susan started sharing her screen. Did you mean to do that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, but there was a hand up that you took it away.
I'm sorry. I thought you wanted to let everyone know they can get in touch with you, Andrew.
I did, but I didn't want to at the same time,
Should I stop sharing my screen?
No, it's all right. It's all right. I think that was more of an applause than a hand, but if someone wants to put their hand up, I'm watching the participants right now.
Okay.
I'm not seeing
So
any.
thank you so very much. We kept 24 of 32 people for 75 minutes. You know how, if you have further questions, you can get in touch with us at this email address and my phone number. Regional resilience itself is not on the OHI website. It's at waterscape.ca. That's waterscape.ca. And you'll find the submission in Word to borrow. You find it in PDF to read. And then if it so moves you, you can send our recommendations to the ministry and to your local MPP. Thank you, Hen. Thank you, Stephanie. I think you wanted, oh, you already done it. Stephanie, you want to make a few closing comments, please?
Well, just to say thank you on behalf of Hen, to Andrew, Lexi, and Susan for bringing their presentation to Halton Region to support our community in knowing how to submit their response and their thoughts about growing the Greenbelt. And we hope that this has helped a lot of people to be able to support their actions in doing so. So thank you very much. It's been very helpful.
Thank you. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.